All right, so welcome back. So the past 2 days, we really focused on our team. You identified the stakeholders and started to form your team. You thought much more broadly, and I hope much more broadly than you did before we came into this course as to who you're really leading. That's how important it is. Now what you need to do is you need to clearly and explicitly begin to create a social contract for the norms of this group. How does interacting with this group look? Let me pause for a second. If you go back to the very first 2 modules that we were working on together, we were talking about the crazy nature of the world that we live in. Frankly, it's been like that for decades, but it's come to roost. And what did it demand? It demanded what we talked about in the second module, which is a whole new set of leadership constructs. What does it mean to be a leader today? This is the social contract. We're going to now talk about how do you take all of those things that we've talked about, and I want you to bring those back into a set of norms of how we work together. This is not the old school written BS, posters on the wall, values statements, etc. And I don't mean to degrade these, but I've been in lots of exercises, right, where I've gone into organizations and I have seen these posters on the wall about what the leadership traits are. What do we believe our culture is? And with a couple of conversations, I realized that's not how we act, right? What's so important is for us as a leader to be transparent, to know how we act today, and to realize that there's a shift. And it could be a shift that we're constantly striving for and maybe never quite achieving. But in the same regard, I want us to be clear. I want us to be transparent. I want us to begin to contract for the new world that we're leading. The difference is that I'd like you to tether this discussion to a real commitment. No BS, just putting stuff on a piece of paper. I want you and your tribe, I don't mean the tribe of Mind Valley, I mean the tribe of your team, right? Remember I talked about belonging and coming home? I want you as a leader to begin to feel that you are helping this group of individuals really bond, come together. No matter what the diverse constituencies are, your job is to bring them together as a tribe, and you're building that. And I want you to really feel that you're leading this sense of belonging among the team. Yeah, and I want you to feel it in our DNA. And in your heart and in your discussions among the group, I want you to, as we contract how we're going to work with each other. Look, in the past, we didn't lie to each other, right? Well, you said that's pretty clear. We don't lie to each other. Okay, that's pretty good. And we're going to bound our integrity by not lying to each other. But in the same regards, we sat in a room and we didn't tell the truth. We didn't challenge each other. We didn't push each other. So there's a new set of characteristics that for you to be extraordinary and for this group to be extraordinary, I want you to make a commitment almost to integrity. What is integrity among this group? How do we treat each other? It's big. It's very important. And I know that today, there are many organizations and many teams that lead outside of integrity. We say one thing, but we practice another. The values on our walls are not aligned to the reality of our behavior. That's not leadership. We need to, and even when we fail, by the way, I'm okay with failure. I'm okay with humanity, but I'm not okay with a lack of transparency. So today, I'm going to talk about how to accomplish this recontracting through a formal process. If your team is new, right? If your team is new, you need to really identify immediately and explicitly build this agreement among the team, this social contract of how we're going to behave. If you have an existing team that's already been existing, well, this would be an opportunity to recontract, to reboot, to say, this is how we used to behave, but leadership in the future and how we're going to work together needs to look like this, not that. And it's a new era that we're in. We all want to be successful. We have been enlisted together in a shared purpose and a shared mission. And if we're going to co-elevate, we're not only committed to the mission, we're committed to each other. So we've got to agree to the social norms. So social contracts really are different kinds of contract. It's a social contract consists of the norms and the behaviors, but people have to collectively agree to them, right? So some of them are conscious, But the reality is we live in some pretty subconscious social contracts today. For instance, and it's integrated in everything we do, how we hold one another accountable or how we don't hold one another accountable, how we collaborate with another in order to get more ideas into my decision-making, or how we don't collaborate with each other. And therefore we just make decisions based on a limited set of ideas. How we speak candidly with one another and boldly, and how we challenge to get the best answer, or how we don't, how we're conflict avoidant and we just sit back. They determine everything. The social contract determines everything. And it's unfortunate that most leaders of yesteryear have sat on stale social contracts that erode value and stop us from being extraordinary. And that's not going to be you. You're going to be negotiating a new contract for this new era. Now, they operate in the background. It's like a computer software system always running in the background that you don't notice. So it's important that you bring this up to the forefront. The big problem, by the way, is that we mostly fail to give them an honest and critical review, which we're not going to do because we are going to give them an honest and critical review in this module. We fail to purposefully negotiate them and hold each other accountable to them, which is really important, which is the holding of each other accountable to these norms. Now, this is one of the most powerful contracts in your professional life from my perspective. So please treat it as such. This is that important. Let's get into the process of recontracting now. You should apply this pretty much to all of the constituencies that matter to you, not just the core group that you might consider your working team. You should apply this social contract to any aspect of an interrelationship that matters to you to achieve what you're trying to achieve. It requires a high level of trust. So you may actually want to invest in building that trust. Later in our sessions, we're going to be talking about how you can build the trust, the psychological safety that exists within your team or doesn't exist within your team. So these modules, as you go back over time and re-listen to these modules, are not just all sequential, but they can actually be played over and over again, depending upon what you need with the team that you have. But I first want you to call the question, meaning I want you to at least state that we are in a reboot moment. We're in a moment where we're going to define the way we're going to work together. We're going to shift from the way we've always worked together and the way we're going to work together. Today, we can leave whatever doesn't work for us behind. All right, so let me give you a few steps to do this formal recontracting with your team. And that matters whether it's just a handful of folks or whether it's a broader team. It's up to you. It's still the same set. First of all, I want you to be respectful of people's time. I want you to formally schedule that this is a dialogue that you would like to have so that people can think about it in advance. It's not an event that you can squeeze into some meeting, for 5 minutes off to the side or just discuss it as you're passing something else. I want you to also be very considerate. You're asking people to come to something that's very important, as I've said. So consider scheduling when people are relaxed, in a good state. You feel like, whatever day of the week you think is appropriate, where you feel that they'll be comfortable, right? So step two is creating that safe space. So I want you to send an invitation in advance. And it's so important that you set a tone, a tone of welcoming, a tone of possibility. Don't be too evangelistic, right? You want people to co-create this with you. This isn't something you're instilling upon them. Also, I want perhaps maybe you can send some pre-reading. And I want you to do this in advance. And again, I mentioned tone, on tone. I want you to be positive. I want you to be aspirational, right? Not critical and disappointed. This is not what we're doing well. This is, boy, wouldn't it be great if kind of language. I want you to use we language, not I. It's not about you doing this to the team. It's about us. And it's recognizing that you personally are going to have to shift behaviors as well. I want you to focus on the benefits that we, the team, could all enjoy if we take a real humble and honest approach to where we are and how we want to grow. And be prepared that you're going to be the leader of that humility, opening yourself to where you think you can change as a leader and maybe even asking for that kind of input. All of this opening is a word that I created, another word I had to create because so often this new form of leadership doesn't even have vocabulary around it. The word is called porosity. Porosity. This table in front of me has some porosity, absorptiveness, etc. Right? This chair has more absorption. This glass has less. I want your people to be porous, open, absorptive to your message, to you. We'll be talking more about opening that porosity later. So step 3, I want you to assess and acknowledge. I want you to ask openly, where is the opportunity for us to recontract? Where is the opportunity for us to build something better and different than what we've experienced before, whether this is a new team or an existing team? What does a dream team look like? What does a dream team look like? What a beautiful question. It may be the first time your team has actually directly examined the social contract that we've been operating within. So it could be a little intimidating, and you're likely not to get full candor and fluid discussion, so be patient. This, by the way, is an iterative exercise that can happen over a period of time. The way you work together is what we're looking at. Now, let's talk about the actual discussion. We've developed a simple assessment, as I mentioned to you, that will guide you as through this discussion as a set of straightforward questions. It cuts to the core of all of our research of what does it take for a team to be successful. There are 8 dimensions that distinguished high-performing teams: candor, collaboration, teaming out, accountability, development, energy, relationships, and outcome. I would even recommend that you distribute a survey of these questions to people and ask them to look at these in advance even. Distribute the survey to each member of the team. Walk them through it question by question, like I'm going to do with you here, right? Have them write down a score of 1 to 5 for each question. 1 being, we don't have much, we aren't this. 5 being, this is how we live, this is who we are. And make sure that they feel safe and that this is going to be anonymous. And what we really are just looking for is an honest assessment of who we are today. These 8 are so crucial. They are the opportunity for you to redefine the future of your team and your leadership. These are the social contract that I talked about in module 2, or that's what's required of leaders today. So let's go through them. Candor. Are we speaking candidly and courageously in service of each other and the mission? Or on the other hand, are we conflict avoidant? Do we shy away from truth telling? Can we speak boldly in a room? 1, heck no. 5, yeah, of course we do. Collaboration, second one, collaboration. Are we collaborating and creating tangible value from the inclusion and the interdependencies that exist between us? Does an individual show up in the room excited to collaborate? Or have they baked their answers outside of the room and then they come in just bolting in and wanting to share? So it's so important that we make sure that this is a collaborative effort among the team. 1 to 5. Teaming out. Are we strategically and intentionally teaming and building authentic relationships with other people who are critical to our success? Or are we just thinking narrowly around what our team is? We need to be bold and inclusive. We spent so much time talking about this. Now ask the team the question. Are we as a team have a social contract of teaming out or teaming in? Accountability. Are we accountable for our individual commitments? And are we dedicated to doing whatever it takes to hold each other accountable and cross the finish line together? We're going to be spending an entire module on this. So important that we cross the finish line together. We hold each other accountable, that we lift each other up. This is so crucial and important. So I want you to assess whether we are or we are not today. Development and growth. Are we actively pursuing learning experiences and providing peer-to-peer coaching to one another? Are we not only individually seekers, but are we each other's coaches? Now, this is a very different contract from the old days when you expected your coaching to come from your boss. The new leaders of today are coaches of each other. Energy. The fatigue, the fracture, the frustration. Remember we talked about this? You contracting for how the team will maintain energy is so crucial. Here's the question. Are we maintaining each other's engagement and elevating energy by celebrating success and demonstrating gratitude? Is this team lifting each other up? Relationships. Are we leading with generosity and building caring, trusting, and supportive relationships with one another here? Are we relationally solid amongst us? Do we care? Do we trust? And last, and we talked about this, outcomes. Are we all pushing higher? Are we pursuing innovation? Are we transformative? And are we focusing on transformation rather than the status quo? That is so important. It's not 10%, it's 10x. Is that where we're going? And I'll even give you a bonus question. Are we reaching our full potential as a team? Are we a dream team? All right, so when you're done with all of this and you've talked about it, hand them in. I want somebody to count and report the average. While it's tabulating, I want you to open up a dialogue with the team. I want you to ask them how the survey made them feel, how it affected the way they see the team, and ask them if they ever felt a desire to change any of these things, right? Review the actual scores and talk about what comes up for people. Now, the last step is a step of commitment and action. I want you to ask, how would each of these be if they ended up as a contract? Meaning, how would we show up if we agreed to these? I want you to ask, how would each of these feel if they actually were a contract? So there's another thing that I want you to pass out to everyone. Here are the questions, but shown up in statements. Candor. We speak courageously. Collaboration. We co-create in order to innovate. Teaming out. We break down silos. Accountability. We finish and we win together. Development. We coach each other. Energy. We lift each other up. Relationships. We are committed to one another. Outcomes. We seek transformation. I want you to walk through each of these. And then ultimately, I want you to pick one, just one. I don't want you to try to reboot the DNA of every human that's working on and working with you on a team. I want you just to pick one humbly and saying, we're going to sprint over the next month to really focus on this one thing. What one thing, if we changed for the next few weeks, would really make a difference? What should we focus on? Then ask the team to identify actionable behaviors that would show up if we did these. Ask the team to discuss what work life would be like if we changed this particular item. And generally, what would it be like if we changed all of these eventually? How will we feel about our jobs and each other? How will the performance of the team change? Let's make it possible and vivid. I want people to taste it. I want it to be energy creating. And now it's time to really commit. Commit to carrying out the behavior and the change. I want you to lead personally with humility. I want you to be the first one to say that you're going to do your best, but that you might fail. I want you to ask the team to even hold you accountable. I want you to ask the team to hold you accountable if you do slip, because it's so important as a leader to let people know that we're all going to struggle and we're going to get there together. Invite each member of the team to join you in publicly committing to this particular act. This is tying to integrity. This is a group of individuals looking each other in the eye and saying, we're going to do our best. But by the way, it does work if the team is first to try. If your team isn't, then you know that this is going to be a sparse effort at the beginning, and you're going to have to solidify over time. If not, then there's more work to do to build relationships, but we'll let you and we'll help you do that in the modules to come. It's so important that we have trust, right? Which we're going to get to. And remember again, that people are human, including yourself. This won't all happen overnight. It's a cumulative process that builds over time. Show grace, show patience, raise the bar, but accept that one another will stumble. You'll do this many times, as much as you need to and should do. I mean, this is something that isn't a one-time activity. I would recommend you do this every month as you see movement in the area. 1 month behavior change sprints. So what's your mission? You get it. This is an extremely powerful action that will transform your core team. It can be used with any team, even more broadly. I want you to identify who your team is, and I want you to schedule the recontracting. I want you to do the recontracting. If you don't have a team in place yet, it's okay. I want you to recontract with yourself. Which of these will be tough for you? And what can you start working on now? even with friends. Recontracting is the core. It's the start of your future. It's the start of landing all of the things that are needed as a leader. Next week, it's all about making it a reality in practices. I will see you there.